upon lunch.
What's the next one?
Here a little
Here
and there a little.
Here a little and what?
All right, I've been planning for a minute to address this one, so we're going to get into it. And once again, I'm just going to share my computer screen so you guys can see what's going on there. So to begin with, we have to understand who is even talking here. Now, many Bibles don't put the quotation marks in, but what we find is that it is actually the drunk prophet and priest who are being discussed above are those that are speaking here. So when we get to verse 9, to whom would he teach knowledge, and to whom would he interpret the message? Those just weaned from milk, those just taken from the breast? See, this is key. They're asking, is he just teaching little babies? That's essentially the point. And we see this borne out in other translations. If we flip and we go to verse 9, for example, the Christian Standard Bible, who is he trying to teach? Who is he trying to instruct? Infants just weaned from milk, babies removed from the breast? Similarly, the ESV, to whom will he teach knowledge? To whom will he explain the message? Those who are weaned from milk, those taken from the breast? The New Jerusalem Bible says, whom does he think he is lecturing? Whom does he think his message is for? Babies just weaned? Babies just taken from the breast? And the NLT, who does the Lord think we are, they ask. Why does he speak to us like this? Are we little children just recently weaned? Notice, they ask. That's the drunk priest and prophet. Now we get into verse 10, and some translations add, for he says. The idea is not that God has actually said this, but they are exaggerating things and talking about the way that they are being treated. And so we find it says, for precept upon precept, or law after law from the Christian Standard Bible. But there is a key point here. The term that is here rendered precept is not the term that is normally rendered precept throughout the Bible, where it is referring to God's laws. In fact, when we look into the text, what we find here is we go down into the Hebrew, and we have this verb, or this noun rather, sav. And so as we look for it, what we find is as we search throughout the text of Scripture, and it's a little bit blurry here for some reason, we find that this term only appears 3 times in all of the Old Testament. Here in verse 10, in verse 13, and in Hosea chapter 5, verse 11. We'll flip over to that, and we'll read here in the King James Version. Ephraim is oppressed and broken in judgment because he willingly walked after the commandments. Well, what does that mean? All right, here we're going to look at the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, but we are going to do so electronically for the sake of time and space. And notice, here is this word saw, and notice the places it is used. It says in Isaiah 28, 10, 13, the word appears parallel to ka, line. Some suggest these are elliptical, sarcastic mimicries mocking a prophet's speech. One suggestion is the sound of a teacher and pupil constantly reciting the alphabet. Another possibility is a sound alluding to the roots. Command. Another is that it is baby talk. The context is clear. The people are ridiculing Isaiah's message of meaningless tidbits. He, in turn, announces that these tidbits will be the standard by which the people will be judged. In Hosea 5:11, saw is amended in the Septuagint to shah. He is determined to go after vanity. If saw means worthless and ka is a measuring line used to mark off something for destruction, then the play on sounds in Isaiah 28, 10, and 13 draws from the vocabulary of judgment. In other words, this is in no way a prescription of how to interpret the Bible, which would not make any sense anyway, because many books of the Bible already existed before Isaiah 28 was ever even written. And what that would mean is that up until that time, nobody understood how to properly interpret the Bible, which is simply absurd. So when we look at other translations and how they handle this, it's very interesting to look at the New Jerusalem Bible. Here it just says, with his sav lasav, kav lakav, kav lakav, zir sham. It's not even translating it because it is taking it as really this idea of gibberish. When we look at the NLT, he tells us everything over and over, one line at a time, a little here, a little there. This is not a positive statement either. The NET, indeed, they will hear meaningless gibberish, senseless babbling, a syllable here, a syllable there. Again, not how the Bible should be read. The JPS Tanakh, the same mutter upon mutter, murmur upon murmur, now here, now there. So at the end of it all, none of this is a prescription for how we read the Bible. No, not at all. In fact, these are the ramblings of the drunk prophet and priest. Definitely not who we want to be following. So if anyone tells you, go here to learn how to read the Bible, they just don't understand the text. They don't understand what they're reading at all.